I was introduced to Linda by Larry here at the Harrow Campus Library, and it struck me just how easy it was to enable our students to get much more of a sense of those soft skills that sometimes we're not very good at getting them to get into. The things that aren't being in the studio or aren't being in a particular area of use of technology or understanding the business, but really understanding those subtle hidden things about project management, working with groups, working with teams and things like that. And we always used to try and teach that ourselves with big formalized classes, but in the end we found that quite often you could get a much better result with someone else doing that on a video that students learn in their own time, but with some suggestions from us. Literally about 15 seconds. It's a fantastically useful thing because it embeds itself so nicely into the rest of the IT services, so it's very easy to get through from reading lists and to link through to there. It's also really good to look at individually, maybe from library search, from the e-resources part of that, for example, or even direct when you're somewhere else. And it's pretty blindingly obvious to use, to be fair. Initially, I tried looking at playlists via Linda directly, but because I've also used reading lists a lot more fully this year across pretty much every module that we run, then I found it was so much easier to embed the things we wanted them to look at into those reading lists, so the reading lists become, in effect, watching lists rather than reading lists, and we get a much higher take-up of use of those reading lists as a result. I would strongly recommend anyone to have a go at this sort of work, particularly in subjects where this kind of area of working with people, working to get specific gains done by a particular time is sort of part of the curriculum, but maybe not explicitly as much of the part of the learning experience as it could be. So I'd really recommend then that they had a go to try and get the students to engage with the video content on their phones and things like that, instead of perhaps trying to force the learning through a more traditional teaching experience with a sort of chalk and talk thing, because we find that the Linda examples work so much better because they're quicker, they're targeted, and highly recommended. So I think the main thing about that use of Linda for soft skills training is that it's always part of the teaching, and of course it should be, but there's something about the magic of it being within that rectangle in your hand that allows that teaching to come through that much more vividly and approachably to students than if it's in a live situation with one person teaching and the benefit of their experience as a project manager or whatever. If I had to sum up my use of lynda.com materials, it would be absolutely no stress because it's so well embedded into the rest of the technologies that we use at Westminster, and it's so useful for encouraging students to think of that learning in a different way. It gets them out of that chalk and talk mindset. It's so useful in so many ways, and it takes a great deal of teaching pressure off in some sort of areas from some of my colleagues.